Where do we even begin with this? I don't know my years very well. I'm just very versed in, like, the story, kind of. Because I find it to be one of the most interesting, like, unsolved... this is gonna be loud. It's such an interesting example of everything seems way straightforward, super clear at the start. You know who to point the finger at. There's some things that you're questioning, like, how do they not know she was in the basement after, like, a full day goes by, blah, blah, blah. And you know that there's, like, oh, there was some, like, police tampering and shit like that, so there's a good chance that maybe they bought out the police. I don't know. But the more things came about, the crazier and crazier it got. Bitch, I ain't no Nexpo. I ain't no Rainbot. I ain't no Atrocity Guide. I ain't no Scare Theater. I ain't one of these bad bitches who could cover this shit way better. I am someone who's just genuinely interested in the case, because I find it super interesting. And if you're someone who isn't into true crime or whatever, I apologize. Ew. Okay. Anyways, but I feel like it's a really good starting unsolved mystery, like true crime type of case. Ooh, maybe in the future I'll talk about Diane Downs, because that is a crazy story. It was such an ironic twist of, like, the more and more she talked, the worse she looked. Jonbenet Ramsey, to give a little backstory, if you've ever seen Toddlers and Tiaras, she was in a lot of, like, beauty pageant, like, child beauty pageants. And her mom was quite the stage mom, I think is what the technical term is. Like, she was very, like, from what I heard, like what people say, is that the mom used to do pageants when she was younger, too. And she was really, from what they say, very hard on Jonbenet. Like, there were definitely, like, I believe they said signs of abuse in that household. Yeah, there was that. There's a Netflix, like, special talking about the Jonbenet Ramsey case. And, which, I forget. I think Montana watched it. I'm small fry, check her out. I think I was talking to, and I forget, but I feel like she thought it was such a crock of shit. And, yeah, it kind of is bullshit, because me and Montana obviously are the types that are into answers, especially with a case like this. And really all they did was interview actors who were portraying the characters in the story, who were portraying the real life fucking people. It's a lot more hearsay. In that special, they say that the father had very close connections with the cops. People right there suspected foul play. They suspected going over the, above the law. Remember, we weren't there. We weren't there at the house. Think about it. The only people, and I know this is going to sound very tinfoil hat, but the only people who were reporting on this case, who were giving us information, were the police. The more you hear about this case, the more, like, you get into that conspiracy part of your brain. Get more confusing the more information we find out. It makes no sense. It should be clearer. But that's not how this case works. So they said he had connections with the cops. It was also said, and I just want to put a trigger warning here, that, like, I'm going to be talking about obviously murder, but also child murder specifically, and also child sexual abuse. So if those are things and subjects that really trigger you, I really don't want to hurt you in that way. But it is part of the case, so if you don't want to listen, I would say skip ahead to this time. Hopefully I remember to put something. But anyways, they said that Jonbenet, in the autopsy, this was a random person that murdered her. You know, I would understand if there was, like, molestation or sexual abuse. But they said that from the scarring, which, that they could tell there was ongoing abuse. Meaning this wasn't the first time she was sexually assaulted. Among other things, like, for instance, her getting fucking murdered in her own fucking home, which even that could be up for debate, because they couldn't find her in the fucking house, supposedly. So, yeah, okay, so let's get into the actual case. Actually, no, before that, we should talk about the other family member, Brock. I believe that's his name, and you guys have seen the quality of these videos. You really think I'm doing research ahead Brock, he is the older brother of Jonbenet. And again, it was said that he had behavioral issues. He, for instance, had, I'm going to put the word here, but there's basically this word. It's an actual thing that some kids do. They, like, poop, you know, and they take their fecal matter and spread it. I watched this guy on, like, YouTube who has an autistic daughter, and she's, like, nonverbal, very high on the spectrum. I love that channel, though, because he's, like, so sweet, and he gives really helpful tips on, like, how to raise a kid with extreme autism. So, like, kudos to that guy. I'm gonna link him down below. He has a really cool channel. And you know what? We should be shouting out more channels that are really fucking awesome. But in his video, he was talking about, the video I saw was that he developed essentially like a jacket to put on her when she goes to sleep, because kids with that level of autism, from what he was saying, have a tendency to do something called fecal smearing. And it's really just like if you really think about it, it's just because of like the stimulation. You know, you feel something warm and squishy, and like to her, it's basically just a toy, you know? It's just stimulation, visual. You get the visual sensations, the sense of smell and all that stuff, and the tactile sensations of it. If you really think about it, playing with poop is probably like playing with Play-Doh, so it's like, it's understandable that she would, you know, play with it. So he developed this like really cool jacket for her to wear so that she can't like get into her like pajamas, essentially, to get to her like underwear. So all that's to say, Brock had a tendency to fecal smear, and sometimes he would, they said, smear it on Jonbenet's face and stuff and everything. But he wasn't like an autistic child. He might be on the spectrum, sure, but I'm not going to diagnose this kid. It's an actual disorder that kids can have that's not related to autism. From the sounds of it, from what people said, he's emotionally disturbed. And anyway, that's the whole family. I'm glad we painted a little picture. So basically, one day, Jonbenet goes missing. So at first it was a missing persons case. It's like an Amber Alert, right? They've looked up and down the house, and all they found was a ransom note. A day later, they find her in the basement, and she's dead. So, but you know, she's unconscious. Not unconscious, she's just straight up dead. That's the case at first. Like, little things are revealed, right? First one was that, which people pointed to a lot, was that there was a Christmas party the day before, and there was a Santa Claus there, and that Santa Claus told Jonbenet, I believe it was something like he had a present for her or a surprise for her, and so people pointed fingers at him, that he killed her, raped her, and all that stuff. Wow, Christina. That was like, you know, what happened, but then other things were revealed. Someone said that, oh, the ransom note was written on stationery. And they said like, oh, and but they said, oh, but did the mom write the ransom note? That makes no sense. Some would say like, oh no, it was just like the person who broke in and they made the ransom note on the stationery or whatever. Supposedly they were trying to match up Peggy's handwriting with the handwriting on the note and everything. And that was a whole thing, whatever. So then that was something weird. They also noticed that the way, so this is what's the craziest thing about this case. All the family are like suspects, and this is how. You have that note, but then you also have that when Jonbenet died, she had pineapple in her stomach. They found the bowl that had pineapple in it in the kitchen. They said the last person to touch it was Jonbenet's mom. They're trying to put together that the last person who saw Jonbenet alive was the mother. But then they say that that the father looks guilty because I think the next day he was trying to get out of the country, like a vacation, just out of nowhere. And I think, don't quote me on this, he was fuck. I'm gonna get this wrong. I think he was filing for life insurance when like you kill someone and you want money for their death or whatever, so you file for life insurance. So basically it looked fishy because the dad's trying to get life insurance payment for his daughter's death, like literally the day after it's confirmed. Definitely suspicious for a grieving father to be doing. And the last piece of the puzzle is when Jonbenet was killed, so she had these 2 markings in her neck, which looked very distinct. They weren't like bite marks. They weren't like marks made by a knife because they didn't go all the way through, I don't think, but they definitely harshly bruised her skin. And they said that the markings matched up really well with train tracks that were part of a train set Brock had. Oh my god. But that doesn't really prove anything. Basically, at the end of the day, the Santa Claus, I don't think, was found guilty, even though he put on a play after his wife died about a very similar situation, but I think it happened years before the Jonbenet thing, so that's what made it really suspicious, is that this guy made a play about a girl who gets raped and killed in her own basement. Oh, really fun stuff. There was a guy who came forward and said it was him, but there was no strong evidence that it was. Obviously, people, I think even to this day, police officers in that town, I believe it was in Colorado, use that case as how not to conduct an investigation. There was so much tampering. Oh, that was a big thing people said, that there was a lot of in and out of the house. There was a lot of people just like coming in and out, which was tampering with evidence and all that stuff. I personally think a lot of that was intentional. It's such a sensitive case in the sense that this is a child. Why are you going to treat it so recklessly? There's a chance that she could be alive. She's just missing at this point. So why would they, dilly-dally and fuck around like that? This is the story that I think Montana and I finally agree on. I think what happened was it might have been Brock who went a little too far with roughhousing or trying to hit Jonbenet, which he would do, and ended up killing her, which explains the track mark in her neck. And then the mother and father came to the conclusion that they only have one child now because the other child killed the other one. And so in order to preserve and protect their only child that they had, they decided to make themselves look guilty in order for the blame to be shifted onto them than their own child. Take that as you will, I guess.